So I was asked if I could pass on hints and tips about filing. And I thought about boring you to death with PowerPoint and decided against that. You're just going to get to hear me talking. But I would like to share my screen, and Lee, you're going to have to allow me to share my screen.
Denise, is that you, Denise, I think?
It says host disabled attendee screen sharing, which is a very good security thing to have on your Zoom.
Aha, can you sort that, Helen? Sorry, Denise?
So, no, not yet.
She's working on it.
Yeah, anyway, so let's just get going. I'm here to inspire you to put it away, get it back, because the only reason to put something away is so that you can get it back, right? How many people put it away and don't get it back? I do sometimes. I wonder where I put it. And what I notice as I go around friends, family and clients is that they talk about putting it in a safe place. But the safe place is never recovered. So I think there's a business opportunity. I'm going to create very nice, perhaps leather boxes or something and name it safe place and charge a lot of money to sell them to you. So you can put all your stuff into a safe place, but that won't help you find it. So I'm really a logistics person, and I've developed cunning and creative ways to help people to put it away so they can get it back. You know, notice that, put it away so you can get it back. You'd like this, John. And what I do know is that I learned most of this last century when I started work in the Department of Māori Affairs, which had a very good filing system. Of course, they also had a cast of thousands who looked after it. And that's not what happens now, as you well know. So what we're going to talk about is a sort of an outline on about home filing, because I'm thinking home filing, but this will transfer into your digital as well. And I say that because if it doesn't work manually, it will not work electronically. There's just no question about that. Now, some of you youngsters, Nikki's youngsters, you're probably digital natives, as we call them, from a different age. And so you won't be thinking about what the file should look like, because I'm going to get one down and show you. Because I keep some of these files, and it's idiosyncratically named. It's a past property I owned, but really I could probably throw it out. There's an emotional content. I won't. Sometimes when you're looking at your paper, there's an emotional content to it, not a rational thing to it. And I bet university students struggle with throwing out their research papers. Is that true? You could wave if that's true. So I can help you with that as well. What I do think you need to have is a plan. You can't really go ahead and do anything by just leaping in. How many people just leap in? You wouldn't, William. Well, maybe. But experience, I mean, the thing is, I recognised in about year 10 of being the Flying Filing Squad that we made most of our money doing people's filing. And so at that point, we stopped writing proposals for policies and procedures and stuff. We just did the filing and trained them how to do it. So I can tell you that if you've got a linear metre of paper, so think, no, you can't see, I can't open my hands out that wide. It will take you 8 hours to sort it out. So don't beat yourself up for not sorting it out quickly. 1 metre, 8 hours. And I can tell you now that you also need to be clear about why are you doing this, and different things happen. And in lockdown, I picked up the final 4 boxes that I took out of my mum's house when it was sold. And there's still an emotional content in that stuff. On the other hand, as I'm going through the photos and looking at them thinking, I don't even know where that is, ditch. Here's somebody I know, keep. So it's those, a lot of this stuff will have an emotional contact if you're doing personal papers. And you need to realise too that just because it's old, because some people will say to me, oh, it's over 7 years old, throw it out, I don't need to keep it. Well, not true if it's a contract that's still in force. not true if it's of enduring value, like some of that Rotary stuff is of enduring value and can get to the Turnbull Library. So you really do have to ask questions as you're looking at the paper. But I also think you need to go fast. And by going fast, I mean you take a heap of paper and you look at it and you think that this is a bank statement. I need to keep it for 7 years. So flick it over there into something called finance. Or this is a contract. This contract is still live. So I do need to keep it. Or this contract has been terminated, or we've done the work we said we would do, we don't have to keep it. So there's those sort of things. And for your personal stuff, I mean, it's hard for personal stuff. For work stuff, it's more obvious because you get into HR and policies and procedures and you've got to demonstrate what you've done. Now, let me divert to a little the reason why you keep stuff. And when I worked in Dosley, which was the Department of Survey and Land Information, I was looking at the contingent liabilities, and one of them was a $6 million liability. So this is back in the 1990s, where the Ministry of Works, which was long gone, had removed pumice somewhere around Lake Taupo, but of course it was on Maori land and they hadn't asked permission. So there was a contingent liability. We looked back over the files, back, the 1960s, when all of that hydroelectric work was going on. We could not find any information anywhere that said an agreement had been made. And it cost $6 million because it was obviously gone. There was a big hole in the ground. And it used to be there. So that's why having records is good. And the other diversion is policies and procedures that happen in government departments. The final, if it's significant, gets transferred to Archives New Zealand. Back in the mid-90s, again, there was a case where the birth mother adopted her son out to an adopted family, who over time decided they didn't want him anymore. And social welfare at the time did not offer the child back to the birth mother. And that child went on to commit murder, as it turned out. She took a court case about they should have spoken to her, and the case relied on the policy at the time as to what do you do if an adoption fails. So they were in getting that out of Archives New Zealand. So that's why I take record keeping very seriously. But I fear that I've diverted, because really we're talking about your mess, not theirs. So all I can say is you've got to pick up your paper and look at it and decide what is it. And I've been doing that recently, and I can tell you that I've come across all of these letters in one of my mother's boxes. So I've got them in a proper file, plastic bag, because these are letters that my nephew Rainer wrote to my mum, and he's now 40, and he wrote these when he was 10. Now, I'm not going to throw those out. I'm going to go, Rainer, look what I've found. Would you like them? If he says yes, I'll put it away. If he says no, I've got a rubbish bin here. Because I don't want them. I don't care that he wrote letters to my mother. I've got all my other stuff. So I would I think we're going to have a better time if we have some questions and conversations, but I would say to you that if you're going to do this, you've got to plan it. The idea is, what have you got? How many meters? Oh, but what, have I shared the screen yet? Can I share? Oh, look at that. Look at that, stand by. And I'm going to share this because I've been learning how to do this without losing all of my other stuff that I can see. So we were joking about being the Marie Kondo of filing, and that every piece of paper we would say, does this paper bring you joy? And the answer might be yes or no. And here is a picture of a Rotarian's garage. Looks like yours, William. No, it's not. I'm just joking.
No, it's
so this is a garage, and you can see, is it big enough for you to see easily? Do I need to make it look bigger, or, oh, wrong thing. Sorry, I pushed the wrong button. I'm not as smart as I thought. So here you'll see that there are cartons there. Those blue cartons are proper archival quality boxes. So they are solid and won't collapse really. And this particular person had this heap of stuff in the garage, and I've no idea what it was. I had no part in this other than providing the boxes at a certain price. So he took all of that mess and he turned it into this, which is upstairs. But you'll see there are pink things on the sides of the boxes. He actually boxed things based on what they were. So he had a plan to sort it out, cluster it together in a way that made sense to him. And he made a list of what was in the boxes. So that's what you're aspiring to if you're going to keep this stuff. How exciting is that? So that was a pleasure that somebody listened and actually did it. I'm here to tell you that it often doesn't work, like William's sorting out the pantry. Because if you don't want to do it yourself and you do it begrudgingly, it won't work. And if I put it all right, it'll soon fall apart. It just won't work. So a little cheer germ, really, aren't I? So with that in mind, what I'm saying is that you've got to have a plan. You've got to systematically go through it. If you're not systematic, then you've got no hope. And it's all you can do, because only you know what you've saved something for. But we see people who save brochures. Well, no, you don't. Just rubbish, bus tickets, stuff like that. Really? It might mean something to the person, but not necessarily to people ongoing. So with that in mind, there must be a few questions. Why don't we have a few questions?
Helen, one question is, so let's assume that you ended up with your garage looking like that one, the second one in the garage photo.
Yes.
How do you keep it organised on a day-to-day basis once you've got it done?
Well, with that, once you've got it done, you don't have to keep doing anything with it. So like those files that I showed you that had my house maintenance stuff in it, if it's a paper file like that, you just keep slotting it in date order, and so it stays in date order, because if it ain't in date order, it's not much use. So it's diligence and perfection, Lee. You've got to just, plainly you're not going to work for the Flying Filing Squad. Hey, but here's a way for you to figure out whether or not you're up to this. And this is what I ask people who apply to come and work for the Flying Filing Squad. I ask them one question: how do you hang out your washing? And then I just listen. And it doesn't matter how they hang out their washing. It's more whether or not they've got a process. And if they haven't got a process, or they say things to me like, oh, my mum does it, I go, well, does your mother want a job? You've got to be, and some people don't actually ever do that. They just use the dryer. Well, okay, how do you put the washing in the dryer? Because if you're putting your silk shirt in with the towel, I have knowledge then that you don't really know what you're doing, because you don't know what the outcome is of drying a silk shirt with a towel. So no right or wrong, but it feeds me an enormous amount of information.
Thanks, Helen. Another question's come in. For things like reference paper, for example, things we've studied, or business papers that are way past the contract period,
yeah,
how to decide how long to keep them? They might be useful someday.
So this is stuff that you've researched off the internet?
Or you might have been research papers, I guess, from university and so on too, if you go back far enough. Yes.
So you've got to be hard on yourself. You've got to say, will I ever be able to, will I even need to use this again? So the question is this of enduring value? And it's only of enduring value if the rest of New Zealand would love it and please put it in archive, or if you are still studying that particular topic, whatever. So only you can decide that. But I notice that some people, scientist type people that I know personally, they never look at it again. That's the emotional content I'm talking about. There's an emotional reason why you're keeping it. So just don't throw it out. I mean, keep the reference. I mean, you might be better off in having a bibliography of what you've got and tossing it, because if you know where it came from, you can get it.
Cool. There's a question that everyone will know who this is coming from. So how can I train my daughter-in-law? There's a few mothers-in-law here listening carefully.
So William, unmute, he can have his say. William is talking to us, I thought. Oh, it's a wonderful thing. Now you're all muted. And I'm not in charge, so I can't unmute you.
Okay. So I did say, how can one train my daughter-in-law, not how I can train my daughter-in-law.
Well, all I can say is that with any learning, you have to want to learn. So because you've demonstrated twice in a row that setting it up in a perfect way, which I'm sure I would love, if it doesn't get maintained, then it isn't going to be maintained. So there is no reward for her in doing it. You won't do it. She got to want to do it herself first. That's just as you're working with resistance, William.
That's the same with lots of things, isn't it?
It is the same with a lot of things. I'm surprised. I offered to look after somebody's horses, dogs, cats in a farm for Christmas. It was great fun, except the pantry, one of those huge pantries that you really can't see anything in. And I picked up the black bean sauce and I read it, and it was used by 2008, and I was there in 2014. And so I said to the wife, would you like me to sort out the cupboard? And she said, yeah, that'd be really good. But before I had a chance to get started, they were in Canada. I got this urgent message from the husband who did most of the cooking. And he said, well, before you throw anything out, you need to ask me. And I went, right, there's no point in even starting, because it would have been ditched.
It was probably best before and not expiry date too.
You know, we were then 9 years on from the best before date.
We didn't warn you you'd be doing relationship counselling on this program, Helen.
But the thing is that once you're working with people's papers, it is personal and they do get terrified. Does anybody know or remember J.B. Munro? So that was where the Flying Firing Squad started out life. We were putting back together the agendas for the IHC that went back to the beginning. And you may wonder, why were we doing that? Well, they were shifting offices, and people only do things with their business stuff when they're shifting offices. Oh, there's an earthquake. And somebody had looked at all of these Eastlight folders on this beautiful shelf, and they said, oh, they're old, 1943, and they threw them out. They took them out of the Eastlights and threw them out. Now, if you're running an incorporated society or a trust, you've got trust laws of 1908, it was at the time, that you have to keep the minutes. It's the record of what's being done. So Helen, the PA to J.B. Munro, got herself into the dump truck and tipped it all out into cardboard boxes. And then we did the jigsaw puzzle of putting it back together. And that's how we got to work for J.B. Munro, who, having got the new records classification structure, he put us to the test and said, well, where will I find the contract for the supply of toilet paper? I think it was toilet paper. And And we went to the file and we found the contract file. It was all paper in those times, and we took them into the shelving system and said, here. So he was a convert at that point. Yeah, so that's
Cool. Helen, here's a very specific one, the opposite extreme from Anand. Is there a problem with plastic boxing? I guess in relation, you mentioned about the proper filing cardboard boxes earlier.
Yeah, plastic boxing, unless it's of archival quality and you've got it from triptych archival suppliers in Newtown, it sweats. So if you're in a non-humidified, meets the archive standard for storing stuff, you risk it being damaged. And back in the 80s, they had all those plastic sleeves that you could put your documents in, but the plastic stuck to the print, and when you took it out, the print was on the plastic, not on the paper. And so avoid plastic at all times. And those really serious boxes that were in the photos, I can organise your purchase of them if you need them, because you need to put them somewhere safe and make a list of what's in them. No plastic, please. I'll visit, I'll help, you just let me know.
It's good and clear, isn't it?
Yeah, don't.
Now, next one from Nikki. It's a bit sad, this one, really, but I think we can all relate to it. Filing is probably one of the most boring jobs. How can we motivate ourselves? Should we reward ourselves?
Yeah. Now, I personally don't do filing unless I'm being paid for it, which is why my office, I'm about a 5. So it is about rewarding yourself, and it's also, once you get that backlog done, just do it every day. So decide that you're going to have half an hour at the end of the day while you listen to Wallace Chapman or put on the concert program or whatever it is that helps you to do it. Sometimes we would do it together as a group when we were working in an office downtown. The answer is do it daily, no matter what.
Oh, damn it, Helen. That means I actually had a question of mine that was going to be, what's one magical thing that you could do, that I could do every day that would keep me organised? And maybe it's that.
But the other thing, like in today, I don't have paper in my office. That file I hauled out is, 15 years old, and I should probably just throw it out. I don't own the house anymore. But we do digital filing. So as a filing system, we're very structured in terms of what we have for our business. And it's about the client files and the system of knowing what number the client is when we do a job, and always naming documents about that client while identifying information. So think about your emails, and people send me emails that say hello, and it's like, really? So I would often reply with what the subject is, because lots of people send me an email that say hello. So it's about thinking about, why am I doing this? So if I'm writing to William about jumbo tennis, the heading probably has JT, because we know that there's only jumbo tennis with that particular initials, and then what it's about. But if I'm writing to William about wanting to organise, I don't know, a barbecue up the coast, it would be a heading which says barbecue this day. You've got to, and why did I learn that? Because I worked in a government department that were really rigid on having a good subject heading on everything you did. And if I couldn't get it right, the typist did, because they knew what to do.
Yes, there's a lot of things that don't happen now because we don't have those wonderful typists, doesn't it?
Yes.
Now, from Denise, she's obviously feeling a bit desperate here, because her question is, if we choose to recruit an organiser, how to make best use of that opportunity?
Well, you've got to be very specific about what is it that you want to do. So what we do, and this isn't advertising for work, but we would do a records management health check. We would come in and we'd look at what your paper stuff is and what your electronic stuff is, and whether or not it links up, whether or not you want to stop having paper always, like we do not have paper. But then it's how are you going to put it away so you can get it back? and you put it away based on choosing what folder to put it in. I know the Department of Conservation run a system that it's so obscure I can't remember its name, but they literally dump everything into the big bucket, and they rely on spiders wandering through, hauling out information. So if I want to find out about Sirocco, whoever he is, you just key in that word and then everything about it comes up. But I find that really hard to work myself. I'm still really a paper file person working in an electronic form. But you need to have somebody come in and go, oh, if you're doing this, then that. You've got to know what your base is before we can help you out.
Helen, one thing that a lot of people told me they were going to do over the lockdown was to sort out their photos, and they breed, really, don't they? So if you were starting from complete chaos with photos, what's a starting point and a couple of tips?
I'd employ someone else. No, quite true. With say mother's photos, because there were boxes of them, I would go through them and hope that she'd written something on the back. If not, throw it out. If you can't tell what it is, throw it out. I even looked at 1900 pictures of great cousin Nancy and thought, no, I'm the only one that knows who she is. No one cares. Gone. However, as I got through into the family photos, I started to cluster them by who was in them. Because it just seemed like, oh, here's pictures of Jenny, I'll cluster them together and I can give them away to her. I don't need to keep them. So that's been part of what I'm doing. With my electronic photos, it's just horrible. I've got no clue about how to sort it out. I used to use Picasso and then they stopped doing it, and then I'm just left with all this heap of stuff in my Photoshop. I've got no idea. And I've been trying to find somebody who's got a good system, and there isn't anybody.
That shouldn't cheer me up, but it does somehow.
It's very disconcerting.
I mean, there's no point in asking professional photographers how they do it, because they're normally doing it based on their client. Now, I'm not going to turn my son into a client so that I can file everything about him. I've been trying to rely on facial imaging. They think that Eric and I are the one person. Well, I know we look alike, but that seems a bit extreme. So,
Denise.
If I might, I mean, I think this one around photographs is really interesting. And sort of like a comment, Helen, one thing I've discovered, and it goes to a couple of your earlier answers, you keep stuff only if you believe it's going to be of use or value, yeah? Exactly. And the thing that we've discovered about photos is that photos that sit in a box messed up with, they're of no value. And we have from time to time taken photos of, it might be from a year, or it might be, we've done this, and turned them into an album. And then that is one of those Photoshop albums. Mm-hmm. And then you have a book that you can look at. Mm. And they're kind of like a coffee table book, I suppose, for the family. And we've had real pleasure out of those. So maybe that's a kind of something you can do with photos. If you can find enough of them, or you search your gear and you say, what was 2015 like? Well, you've got what you've got, and you turn it into a form where it can give you some pleasure.
Yeah, good idea. Absolutely.
We could probably find someone and have a whole thing just on organising photos, couldn't we?
Well, if we find somebody, I'd like to attend.
Yeah, right. Thank heavens for Anne, and he's come back to something that's a bit more manageable, I think. Has Helen heard of a website called Paprika for filing recipes?
No, but I use my OneNote to file my recipes. But this is good. What do we have the website number? The web address? We'll Google that though. But I keep all of my recipes now in my little laptopy thingy, and I Google search asparagus and see how many recipes I've got and whatever.
Any comments on paprika, and or Susan? I think you look like you're unmuted. He's pointing at Susan, even though he asked the question.
Susan will have the answer.
Any comments on it, Susan? No?
Because I think the reason why I keep my recipes on my computer is that if I'm somewhere that I don't have the internet, I can still see them. But I suppose you could put them out into a book.
Yes, what she says, as well as there might being bung, is that Loretta told her it's just called paprika, and she uses it. And of course, we know Loretta's renowned for her cooking, so
yeah, we do.
She know. That relates to another question that I had put down. Keeping your spices organised in the cupboard. You know, I have an alphabetical system, but being me, it lasts at best a week, but I have a heap of spices.
Do you use them all?
Yeah.
Really? Okay. No, I have only a few because I don't.
The family chef is home and it's got worse. Right, no answers on that, huh?
Well, I would file them alphabetically. In fact, I do. So in my cupboard, I have, I mean, it's even more bizarre. I have from an op shop, circular piece of glass, and I've got my packets from the pack and save sort of packets, and I just have them all around the edge alphabetically, so I can spin it around to just pull them out and use them. It's just
I think one of the key things is buy the same brand. Otherwise, you've got some in packets with the tells you what it is on top, and some in jars it doesn't tell you on top, and some other ways. Alphabetical works for me.
There should be regulations around how they've got to put labels on spice containers, I think.
Yeah, I think nice.
And then I hope you don't mind me sharing your tip, Susan and Anne. They replace these spices yearly and freeze them first. And for my food technology brother-in-law, I know that that's correct, because without radiating spices, which we're not allowed to do in New Zealand, it means that imported spices actually are really dangerous in terms of food. The radiation would make them a lot safer to use, but we're not allowed to do that.
Radiate bananas coming in, don't they? Don't they do something?
That's gas, I think. Yeah. Okay. While we're on domestic chores, does Helen have other hints for home tidying, including wardrobes with exclamation marks?
I do. Wonderful set of shelving you can get.
This is a feast, isn't it?
Except I've thrown out the brochure because I don't need it anymore. The Mitre 10 sell this, it's a like a Lego system, for want of a better word, but how to set up your wardrobes and stuff. So I trotted down there with an Iron, who was going to be the home handyman, and he'd measured the wardrobes, and we took out what was there and we've put in their particular system, which means that I can have just a little space for long things, and then the rest are all shirts and skirts. And that was a really good investment for me. And then we were looking at how to make the hot water cupboard a far better method of just getting things in, because what you don't want to do in any system is to file air. So if I've got this much space and I've only got this much stuff on it, then I'm filing air. So we were looking at the cost of putting in the Elba system to make that far more efficient. And in the end, he said, all we've got to actually do is knock out this bit and do that and move those up. And so suddenly I got another like 2.5 meters of space in order to put things in. And that was good. In my corner pantry, like I hate corner pantries. But I'm not going to shift the whole kitchen around to fix the pantry. So I just have lazy Susans, and I have a lazy Susan sitting here that I spin around, and I know that this is the oils in the chili sauces and stuff, and over here I've got the vinegars and the other things. So Lazy Susans make really good use in a corner that you can't get at. I see Nikki's nodding, so you do that too. Anybody else have a Lazy Susan? I've got whole hands of them. So that's the other thing I've done for the kitchen.
Well, you can get that corner revolving thing, and put all sorts of stuff on it and just spins right round.
Yeah, I've got my pots and pans on that.
So Helen, another question. Any thoughts about what to do with our digital files when we retire or when we die? I presume that's not actually our problem, but
You're exactly
that one.
I've done. Okay, so I've got two lots of files. One is my personal files and one is the company files. And I have a software called 1Password, which has the passwords to everything I ever touch, so I don't have to remember it. So I have told the executor of my will what that password is, because somebody's going to have to get in and cancel things and get rid of Facebook and the like. The other thing is that I've just been diligently throwing things out because a lot of it is of no use. It's just, you know, drivel. In fact, I was ashamed to discover that I had 45,500 sent emails in my box, which seemed like, you know, 43,000 too many. And I only discovered that because I'm shifting mail service, so that was interesting. For your digital stuff, it's just back to have the correct folder. Like I have one called health and I have one called car and the like, and I just cluster things there based on what it is about, and then name the document that hopefully I'll understand what it means when I read it again. At worst, sort stuff by what the date is and throw out the old stuff, which is a dreadful thing to do. I would never recommend on paper. But you've got to put it away so that you know that this is a critical document. And in fact, if it is critical, I often write on it, do not destroy. I won't throw it out by mistake.
Well, Helen, the questions are coming in thick and fast. I can't resist telling you that this has to be Susan. She doesn't have Lazy Susan, she has Lazy Anans. So I'd have to differ with you on that, Susan. The one thing you couldn't describe Anand as is lazy, but I love the image. Put him in a cupboard and he goes round and round.
I like it. It's a really
Helen, have you got an email address people could send their questions to? Because I hate calling this...
to Helen@filing. Well, I could type that in for you. Well, you'll all see it then.
Right, excellent. And now I've got my instructions from Jordan, so I better stick to them.
Happy to answer any questions, just feel to shoot them on through.
Yes, and I got a nice hint from Rohini there. Thank you, Rohini. One way to organise spices is to divide them on the basis of their use. Ones which you use regularly put in the front and the others on the back. Fantastic. I'm going to go away and do that. Thank you. Could tell your daughter-in-law that, William.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. You can see from the wide range of questions we've been getting and how much people have appreciated this. You seem to be able to operate at a theoretical framework kind of level, but down into specifics, and also talk in some nice expressions that will stay in my mind, like don't file air. And I've noted down a whole, if you can't tell what it is, throw it out, which is a really good idea, and so on.
I've got to interrupt because when we did the earthquake job for a rather large building in Wellington, we took out 2.5 tons of paper because we could weigh it, and 1/2 ton was a record. So that was 2 tons sitting in a building, not needed. It was rubbish. Sorry.
You can see she won't mind answering your questions because it's one of her passions in life. She, Helen, does. So thank you very much indeed, Helen. That's been great. Now, Denise has decided that we continue these Thursday sessions because they seem to just suit a whole bunch of people. The the timing of them, the positioning of them, and just being able to use, as you can see with Helen, fantastic resources that we've got within the club, or kind of within the club in the case of Helen. So if people have particular topics of interest they'd like to hear about, and you could envisage someone in the club having that expertise, do let Jordan Shaw know, or me or Denise, that would work fine. And also, bye Helen, she's got to go there. If you have an area of expertise that you think would be of interest to people, do let us know that too, because we're just working from what we know about members. We're organising some future topics, so keep an eye on the newsletter. And thank you everyone for coming and contributing in such a relaxed way. I know this particular session will have made a big difference to each of us in all sorts of ways, probably echoing down the years actually. So do come again, and thank you for coming this time.
Thank you.